The boat was originally built to go out and anchor, basically. And other boats that were catching seafood would come up to her and she would be used almost like a barge and then take the catch into port. You know, as a yacht, she has a vastly different role. She was built as a workboat and built for a specific purpose. So converting her to a yacht, it has a challenge in that, you know, system requirements are different. Longevity out on, you know, doing intercoastal runs from, you know, from Florida to Maine.
The unique thing about the Coastal Queen is she's a classic Chesapeake Bay dead rise construction, which consists of a fore and aft planking system on frames above the chine. But in the bottom of the boat, from the chine to the keel, is a cross planking system.
The way that this boat was planked, it made it easy to replace a plank. But what it also did is it exposed the end grain to the outside world.
The purpose of this restoration is to return the boat to full service and full commission.
The only way to replace the bones of the boat, the keel, the stringers, and all the necessary structural elements is to remove the entire interior.
So it's the 17th of February, and we are just closing in on getting the boat fully supported, independent of its bottom.
So right now we're making up one of these vertical legs that's gonna hang off the side of the boat, or it's gonna connect off the side of the boat to help support from the outside. Once this beam and the next beam opposite it are in, we should be able to just have the boat pull the cradle down and have the boat levitating.
So having the boat fully supported independent of the bottom will allow us then to remove the entire bottom and begin the work.
The first 20 feet of it's slicing through here for us. You know, just my name is Duke Bezzosi, and I'm the owner of New England Naval Timbers, and we specialize in boat lumber, white oak boat lumber.
New England Naval Timbers has some of the biggest and longest trees available, which for us, the rare thing that we have to find is a long keel. And I can go to Duke's and buy a 65-foot log out of which we could get a 60-foot keel, and that's a rare thing. I can go and buy a keel or a stem or a knee or a crook stock or even straight bending stock. One of the unique aspects of Duke's business is that he understands what shipwrights need and can get the raw material out in a way that enables the shipwright to utilize the structure of the tree as it grows. A good example is a crook like this. In many cases in a wooden structure, including the Coastal Queen, she has knees that hang underneath the beams, the deck beams, and they tie the deck beam and the hull side together. And those knees come from junctions like this, where you've got a branch and a limb and the main trunk growing into one place. And so the strength that's in this curve is phenomenal. We stretch a string down what will be the center of the keel, not the edge, but the center. That's what we want to control because we want to box the heart in the timber. And so this string represents a straight line through the middle of the keel timber, and it tells us the high spots and the low spots.
Many times historically on a big ship, a wooden ship, they would box the heart for the keel timber. And one of the things you would look for in a boxed heart would be a very high quality tree and kind of equidistance, so you're centering it. So you have a lot of annual growth on all four sides. If you were to try to box the heart and have the heart too close to the top or the bottom, you're just asking for big checks, and that's not acceptable. But if it's big enough, like this you could box because there's so much growth above it and below and laterally that'll be stable. And one thing to look, when I'm buying trees, you check where the orientation of the pith at the bottom, the butt log, and on the tip. And ideally, on a really good tree, there won't be too much wandering of the pith. It won't grow upwards or down. It'll be a relatively straight line from here to there.
This log is the first one to render our keel timbers. So we have a keelson section and we have a keel section, an outer keel section beside it. So it'll give us two pieces of keel stock for the Coastal Queen. We will need to get another length to scarf into this one to make the full length keel, which is 55 feet.
Up or down? Good. Up a little. The end up or me up? You up.
We are setting up to take the weight off of this keelson so we can turn it over 90 degrees. And it weighs about 2.5 tons, so we're gonna need to ease it over so it doesn't disrupt the cradle or anything else, so we have to do that in a slow process. We've got 2 of these cherry pickers and 1 forklift to do that all with, and we're hoping it works out. Picked in 3 points and strapped in 3 points. The straps are pulling it over, and the cherry pickers are going to keep it from slamming. How are we doing? Any clicks? Can you get a click? Let's just keep it going until it goes over. It's almost there. Don't help. Get that out of your hand. Corey, be afraid, please. Be afraid. Stop clicking, let's let down on the cranes.
1, 2, 3.
So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting the rabbet in the keelson. Usually the bevels between the keelson and the outer keel become the rabbet, but at a certain point the rabbet comes up through the keelson. So what we have on our lines drawing, we have our rabbet line, which is this outer section, this line you got here going out, and we also have our bearding line tied into the other bevels, which is the inner section, the inner line for the rabbet. To do it all with power tools is nearly impossible. There's always a wander, you know, like if I started a rabbet with a rabbeting power plane, eventually I would miss the mark, or I would go one direction or the other. Maybe there's a couple guys in the world who can do it, and good for them, but I don't like to take those kind of chances with, you know, we spent a year looking for that piece of wood. So you know, and it wasn't cheap. So I don't want to mess it up.
Anytime we start a real big restoration like Coastal Queen or others that we've done in the past, you know, oftentimes we add people, trusted people, to our core group. And we don't bring those people on lightly. And in this case, we brought on Chet Kaysen and his team.
We got to find another strap this size. I don't want to wrap it.
They're trusted shipwrights that can work well with our group and work with Clark in the decision-making process of how to you know, take care of the bottom of this boat. And they've been an immense help in being able to make sure that the boat is progressing in light of all the other things that we as a company still do, which is maintain an entire fleet of classic wooden yachts that we've restored in the past.
We put 5200 on the keel and the keelson. We slathered both sides. We wanted to make sure there was enough that we had good squeeze out, even if we have to come back and clean it up or cut it off later. I'd rather use too much than not enough, because this is what's keeping everything waterproof. Once it was all bolted together and we tightened all the bolts, and then we retightened all the bolts and wait for squeeze out, retighten them again, and then it came time to lift it up into position. So that was an all hands on deck kind of thing.
You gotta back up just a little bit.
Like that?
Back up just a little bit. Stop there, come on up.
We had 3 engine hoists, one at the aft end, 2 in the middle, and we had our forklift at the front end. We had pre-drilled and screwed in some eye hooks so that we had some solid attachment points, because the thing weighs about 6,000 pounds.
Come up a little bit. Come up a little bit more.
We got it up, and then we, check everything to make sure everything's still safe, make sure those eye hooks aren't pulling out of the wood, make sure everything is stable and hooked in and locked in, and do it slow, be careful. We had a guy at each hoist. We had Jeff on the forklift, and actually it went really smoothly.
It was a big day for the Coastal Queen to get her new keel.
For the first time, we have some legitimate structure back in Coastal Queen. We spent a lot of time getting the boat hung so that we could remove the interior structure from the boat. And now we're seeing that all come back together.
She's starting to look like a boat again, now that the keel is connected to the stem, and at the back end it's now connected again to the rudder post and the horn timber, and its backbone is whole again.
So here we are up at the bow, and part of our biggest challenge with the bow thruster installation on this project is all of this keelson material that's here. There's a lot of material here, and how the tube runs through here, and it's going to protrude out just below the chine here, and there's a certain we've got to be about a foot or more below the water line, which is coming through just about above the chine over here, and then the tube will come out in this range here.
To install the bow thruster, we had to cut this giant hole through the keelson. Mostly I used a chainsaw and then finished it by hand. So we added Purple Heart to the top of the keelson, glued down with G-Flex and screwed in with 4-inch number 20 bronze screws. That will then get a piece of G10 bar or plate that lays and glues and fastens over this to reinforce the top of the keelson. We rabbeted out the gripe to accept the Purple Heart. The gripe stacks on top of the keelson to then receive the knee that supports the stem. Okay, so if you remember, the old original gripe that was in here was all rotted, and they had done a very rudimentary repair by filling the rotted wood with concrete. They poured the concrete into the rotten parts of the keel. My best guess would be just as a gap filler.
Why do you still have it, Dan?
Oh, just for fun.
We're going to come over to the table saw and take some measurements and make a couple of cuts. So this is coated with epoxy to keep it nice and sealed. This is going to be the plank that's most entered to the bilge. So when you're standing inside the boat, this is the one you'll see, which is why it's got that nice coating on it. If we were standing on, let's say, the starboard side of the boat, this plank would be underneath the ship right now. And this end that I just cut that bevel in right there, you can barely see it because it's only 6 degrees, that goes into the rabbet of the keel. That bevel's there to provide room for caulking when we get to that point. So on the table saw, where we were before, one of our first cuts was that 6-degree bevel, and that's that right there. Now what we do next, after we cut that taper in and we're ready to dry fit, because we're going to do a lot of dry fitting, because the power tools only get the board close. The carpenter and the hand tools get the board the rest of the way fit in. We take the board, manhandle it up, we get it close. Then once we're in here, I don't know if you can see in here, down here we've got a nice little gap going, right? So that 6-degree bevel that we had is providing us a seam allowance that will let us put some caulk, oakum, whatever they're going to use. I don't know what they're calling for yet.
Okay. Well, these are the cheeks on the side of the keelson here. This is actually one of the first things I cut. I cut they were opposing angles, basically, the chine log, and then it comes right into these, and I mean, I had to change them a little bit in situ, but they were close. But I think at some point these were put on. They may have been in the original design. I don't know why they would be, because we already have, you know, a 5-inch Rabbet. This extends it basically to 9 inches almost. Right. But I think at some point in the boat's life, the keelson got so soft that it wouldn't hold a fastener. So they put these cheeks on so you could have something to throw a nail in.
On this project, it's really great that we've got 2 different very enthusiastic individuals who are funding the project for us and allowing us to save the queen.
So you glue them, and then you bolt them, you do what?
They'll get screwed in as well. You can see the fasteners that Chet's got coming in through the bottom planking right there.
Yeah.
Those are all the screws going into the, so they got 5,200 in between the planking and the bed in 5,200.
We had planked the boat mostly and then removed certain sections that were, you know, intentionally left unglued so we can pull them out and be able to clamp the stringers in place. Right now that I have the stringers in, I'm putting those sections back together. Like the other planking, we wet it out with regular West System epoxy, and then we'll put G-Flex in between the layers. So now that the stringers are in on the port side, the sections we left open so we could clamp them in place have to be put back in. So luckily at the back there, everything was on a taper, so I could put it in at the end and just hammer it into place till the old screw holes lined up perfectly, and that went in really well. Max is doing one today that is not tapered. We'll see how that goes. I'm hoping that the guidance I'm getting from the screws that have already been, you know, put in are going to put everything where it belongs. but I'm still gonna have to squeeze the third one in between these two.
Every time I do that. What about our markup on the overhead? Because you got the shim in it.
We have a Milwaukee laser level that we use when we need to paint a waterline or when we lay out pieces of the interior of the boat.
We're going to mark the bottom where the bulkhead comes down on the planking as well. So we have that all documented. So once the laser's not here, we'll know what we're building to.
The laser helps us visualize and lay out straight lines on the curved surfaces of the boat.
That's not bad. So now that the boat's wide open, we're starting to lay out these bulkheads. And so we've determined where our gyro is going to go. And structurally, we need a bulkhead on either side of that gyro. So there's one here, and the other bulkhead is right here.
So there's a couple different ways that boats are stabilized these days. Fin stabilizers, which have these, for all intents and purposes, little wings coming out the side of a boat, have been the mainstay in boat stabilization probably since about the 70s. And that is something that we have done in the past prior to the gyro stabilizer technology coming about or coming to maturity. One of the downfalls of fin stabilizers is that they point load the hull too much. And in a wooden boat, you're always trying to spread the load over a larger portion of the structure. And so having just two fins sticking out the side of the boat, we end up seeing a lot of movement in the hull because all the righting moment of the stabilization of the boat is all happening from two spots. Fins are located below the waterline. They require the boat to be in motion and water to be flowing over these wings to be able to stabilize the boat. And then they turn as necessary to sort of square things up. Whereas the gyro stabilizer, it's all internal to the boat.
So the gyro has a large stainless steel flywheel that spins on a vertical axis. So it's spinning like this at 5,000 RPM. Looks like a big, heavy motorcycle tire.
Inside the gyro sphere is a large weighted flywheel. That flywheel in that sphere is in a vacuum.
The gyro is encased in a vacuum in this sphere with the bearings on the top and the bottom that are liquid cooled. The gyro takes probably 45 minutes to spool up, so you have to turn it on before you plan on leaving the dock. And then when you shut it down at the end of the day, it might take 2 hours to stop spinning.
Wow. If the boat rolls to starboard, it imparts a force to port and vice versa in order to dampen the roll characteristics of any boat.
So in the pilot house, we came in, we removed all the electronics. So we had a plotter here, we had a radar here. They're all different manufacturers, different, age ranges. We had a power supply here, a power supply here, power supply here, power supply here. We want this boat to be as modern as possible. So we have the opportunity to bring this up to, 2022 specs. The throttle and clutch control, they're switching to a different control, so it's still, 1940s. Brass, it has, forward slow, forward medium, full stop, that type of thing. On the inside of that is electronic controls that sends that information via wire to the transmission and to the throttle.
It's very important that the original look of the pilot house is maintained, no matter how many additions that we're making to it. It's essential that we keep the original look of the whole boat, no matter what modern amenities we add to it. And the pilot house is obviously a key component of that because it's so important to the aesthetics.
We're basically stripping everything out of the pilot house, and we're going to build that new cabinetry. Everything that we're building is built very similar to the original construction, and we're actually returning to that. We are adding electronics, modern electronics. I think any big boat needs modern electronics. But with this, we're doing it in a way when we're not running the boat, it's all hidden. The Garmin plotter, let's say, will be in a drawer, so that panel will pull out like this. A lot of that stuff is going to be behind the scenes. You know, originally this structure was the only thing in this pilot house long before all these electronics came. I think the story is outside, and you want to, you know, it's looking outside and looking over the deck.
The Coastal Queen was built in 1928 and served as a buy boat for which she was built, for which her hull shape comes from. After working her earlier days as a buy boat, she was sidelined for a short time. The yachtsman bought the boat with the vision of converting it for pleasure cruising and then running a charter business up and down the East Coast, namely from the Chesapeake Bay down south through Florida into the Bahamas and then back again. And he would charge people to go along for the ride and to experience running up and down the intercontinental waterway. And I think he was one of the earliest guys to pick up a boat and start doing that type of a business, recognizing the beauty of the marshlands and the edges of the east coast of the United States from the Chesapeake Bay south.
Coastal Queen is still doing the job that Slade Dale designed her to do, to carry a small number of passengers up and down the coast. You'd say, well, this is a 65-foot boat, only 6 passengers. Well, Coast Guard regulations say that more stringent regulations kick in if you carry more than 6 paying passengers. You can be an uninspected vessel with a maximum of 6 passengers. Another reason that Coastal Queen was the right vessel for cruising the inland waterway is it's relatively shallow draft. So many of the channels of the inland waterway are dredged to, I don't know, 6 feet. You can't carry a lot of depth down here. This is a shallow draft vessel. It makes sense for this type of cruising.
Before we put the planking on, we had cut the Rabbet. You can see the rest of the Rabbet up here. And there's 2 layers of planking in between. And we left, rather than have it at a 90, we left a little bevel, a 6-degree bevel on the planking so that we would have this. And we fit our cotton in there. I'm probably gonna do 2 layers. So this is, you know, traditional cotton caulking. This is 400 or 500 year old tradition. This is how they do wooden boats. This is a traditional caulking iron, specifically a threading iron. It's the one you use to thread the cotton into the seam, but it's, you know, it's 10 minutes I can make it sharp, but I don't really want it sharp because I don't want to cut the cotton. I just use it to, I put the cotton in and then I fold the cotton under itself and over itself, under itself and over itself, till it's tight, and then I hit it with this thicker making iron. You can see it's a little thicker. And you try to, you know, I have all different size making irons to size it to the different size seams and to the different size at different depths of the seam. And I hit it with this hammer. This is a traditional caulking mallet. This one, I believe, is over 120 years old, but the design is, again, several hundred years old. They have this slit in the top here, so it keeps all the reverberation from hitting in the head, so it doesn't travel down your arm and give you carpal tunnel syndrome. And this is 100 years before they had a name for carpal tunnel syndrome.
We're at the point now that we have a physical space in the hull of the boat that Jeff and I can really start to figure out systems.
This is tight, again, but we'll have to look at the other mock-ups.
We have almost 6 feet. We could fit every single air conditioner on that.
We're almost running out of space here with the gyro and this I-beam that connects to the 2 bulkheads. We already know where the generators are going. We already know where the tankage is going. We already know where the engines and the gyro are going. But there's a lot of other things batteries, inverters, hot water heaters. What we're trying to do is make sure it's this balance between the engine, this forward bulkhead, the shaft line, and how compact we can make that with the seal and the flange that's there so we can service that. We need to be able to slide the shaft back and be able to get the coupling off and not move the engine, and all at the same time we want it back as far as we can so we can have enough clearance in the front of the engine to be able to service it. It's all very tight.
This hull started out life, and it has not changed since then, from a 1920s Chesapeake Bay boat. We have to work within the bounds of this 1920s design.
Tell us what you're doing there, Chet. Are you setting that proper?
I'm trying to set it so that the vibration of the extra long bit doesn't make my fence come apart. I've been working on the back of the boat, the transom of the boat. The way the transom is designed, it's basically blocks of wood that are stacked on top of each other and drifted through almost like a brick wall. So Matt was back there doing a superficial repair, and as he did the superficial repair, he found that there was an enormous amount of rot in the upper mid-section of the transom. I started with the router. I started with the little jig, and the rot was so extensive that I just went to town with a big demo chisel and a hammer. And it was entirely rotted back there. We pulled all the bad wood out, and we only had inch and a quarter stuff to work with. So I've just been, doing like they did in the original design, just stacking inch and a quarter pieces into the old rot pocket. The transom is about 6 inches thick, so getting everything to fit, and when you get toward the end, you have to make little wedges to get everything to fit nice together and all that.
So with our steel floors in the engine room and the gyro area, and then forward of that gyro area, all those have been fit, and Corey has been in there cutting and making these little corner clips that attach that stainless steel floor to the stringer and the next stringer, and then there's a gusset where it meets the topsides there, and that lands on a frame that's behind that. So when we lag into that, again, we're just trying, so all the twisting that's happening with the seakeeper that we're put in the boat, that all of that twisting motion helps to, this is all stabilizing it from the keelson out to the chine.
So when we got the steel pieces back from the machine shop, there was a lot of trimming and retrimming, making it just a perfect puzzle piece fit. I did a lot of cutting on a cutoff wheel, just a handheld one, and then we have a really cool metal chop saw. You could just run an angle iron in and make 30 of them fairly quickly. Here we are in the Queen. We've got all the stainless steel floors clamped up. Spent the last 3 or 4 weeks trimming and fitting and leveling and clamping and marking. We got all the steel floors in the boat, in place, leveled, parallel, and measured out and straight where we want to be, marked it all. All that stuff needed to get clamped and fit and tweaked right and hammered right into the spot that it's going to live in.
And now we've got a fabricator that we've used for years and years. One of his guys came in and they were tack welding all the little angles to the floors now. So that 2x2 angle that goes on the keelson, that got tacked in place. Our gussets got TIG welded tacked in place. Then we took them out of the boat and they went to his shop where they then MIG welded them all up solid, continuous weld, no stitch welding, solid welding on all that. And now they're back at our shop. And that's where we're pacifying the welds with some acid and this little electrical device that charges it and helps purifies that.
What we're doing here is we're prepping the stainless steel floors to be pacified. All of it got tack welded in the boat, got taken out to the welders, got welded every single of these brackets here, but there's some impurities in the weld. So what we have with this crazy acid and this crazy machine, we prep the weld to remove all those impurities to make it last longer.
Is pacifying the weld. It's an acid that runs some current through this wand, and it cleans the welds up so they don't end up rusting. It cleans that material up so it doesn't break down and show rust streaks on it later on. I think that's what I want to say. I'm not sure if I said that perfectly.
What is this contraption called something?
I don't even know. This is new. This is new. This is new to me. But I'm not sure, like, to get too in depth in it, because I don't. It's all magic. I don't know what it does.
The Coastal Queen Restoration Series is filmed before a live studio audience.
We've got a really busy spring ahead of us here, and we've got 3 different projects that we're putting engines in, the Queen being one of them. So it's a lot going on here. So I got nothing else to say besides that.
The generators we loaded into the opening in the foredeck with the crane, and we've moved them back now into the engine room. They're sitting on their platforms that we built previously, and they're ready to, get other equipment and start coming in behind them.
Definitely come to me a little bit. We can flex it this way to get that through, and then I might be really tight here too, so we'll see what happens. So we got this crane that came down to help us put the main engine in and the generators in. We'll have it come back when it's time for the gyro. The hole in the top deck there is only so big, so we've got to kind of tweak and twist things to get them into where they want to go.
A little further down.
I don't know if we're going to get clear back here by that time, but I can spin it real quick and try it.
It's a traditional crane and spotter operation where there's one person up on top of the boat giving hand signals to the fellow that's running the crane. And occasionally we use radios, but a lot of times it's too loud for that. So, you know, ultimately it's that, you know, there's still a lot of trust between the two members of that team.
What's that, bro?
It's over here.
Keep going down. Another inch and I'm clear.
Okay, coming down.
Another inch and I'm in. That's the tough part of the bow.
Yeah, we don't need that trim anyway.
Okay, come on down.
Down a little more.
Once we got it down there, we put it on some wheels on the brackets for the engine mounts. I built a little runway to make a straight path through the boat to the engine room, and then, yeah, 4 of us just manhandled it into the engine room.
Little bow thruster update. We've got the hull planking in place on one side.
We got ourselves an enormous hole saw, over 12 inches in diameter, which matched the diameter of the tube that we were supplied by the bow thruster vendor.
We were able to have a custom company make us a really big hole saw, and then we took our time and went nice and easy and kept checking the alignments.
I basically sat the saw inside the keelson and began the sawing there. So it was just hitting the bottom of the planking at first, and then as you get deeper and deeper into the planking, eventually the bottom of the planking hits the base of the saw before you're through the center. So we had to pull the saw out, take everything apart, cut that section off, and then start again. Because that angle is so far like this, 12 inches only comes to here, 12 inches to here, 12 inches to here, and as we went, when we bottomed out, we had to remove that section. But as far as keeping it centered, because we had the center drill and a center hole maintained, it was actually pretty easy. You know, it was a Jeff idea that really worked out. I thought it was going to flip me across the shop. Crawling up and down 2 flights of stairs, then down into the boat, then the hops over all the floors. And Jesus, I'm tired by the time I get to the chain locker. This whole forepeak is complicated as hell. So we've got on top, outside above the deck, we've got the bowsprit, which sits on the deck and ties into this post. Forward of this post is the chain locker, which is going to be all framed out with starboard, so it's watertight. It's all going to be tight, very easy to clean. You just hose it out. We're going to have some drains coming out the bottom and out the side of the boat. But I have to be careful where I drill that hole, because Chris is building some limpets on the outside of the boat to divert water away from the bow thruster tube so it doesn't cavitate constantly.
So we're putting together a cowling that sort of fares the bow thruster with the rest of the boat. The water will flow on the outside of the cowling, hopefully directly across the bow thruster without stalling in here. This approach that we're using is very, very similar to how one would build a half-hull model. And if anybody's ever taken first-year calculus, you'll probably recognize this is quite similar to Simpson's rule, which is basically dividing up a complex curve into smaller bites and then taking each piece at one at a time. Okay. So you'll see the center line for this is right here, and it runs this way. And so what you can see is on each piece, obviously it has 2 edges. This edge is the true cross-section. This edge is going to disappear and fare into this edge.
bow thruster is oriented in the bow such that if the flow of water along the hull is uninterrupted, it will actually hit the back of the bow thruster, the tunnel, which is quite common. So most of the time the solution is to build these sort of fairing foils around the front of the thruster and redirect the water out away from the hull momentarily.
Very nice.
Working at Macmillan, it's a little intimidating. It's it's got a great reputation. When I first showed up here, the boat I was working on was Coastal Queen, and it's a Chesapeake Bay boat, and I know Chesapeake Bay craft pretty intimately from having worked down there. So it was nice to see that. It was a familiar face in a crowd, basically, and so it also allowed me just to jump right in and help because I was quite familiar with the construction.
Step outside and go through those.
This deck beam was just no longer adequate. The original deck beam, at some point they must have done a deck patch or something like that, but they had poured concrete into the deck beam to somehow reinforce it. I don't understand. Maybe they had the deck open at the time and they decided the best repair would be to pour some concrete into the top of the deck beam, which can often postpone rot. I don't want to say it'll stop rot, but the lime in the concrete can often kill the fungus that makes rot.
We've seen concrete used occasionally, and we've seen it in this boat. Earlier in the project, in the forward section of the keel, maybe even up in the gripe area. But I've never, in any boat, seen it be used in a deck beam before.
With this kind of precision in boat building, I would say you can use power tools for about 90% of the work, but almost every single piece that goes into a boat is going to have been touched by a hand tool at some point. The last 5–10% of every single piece, the final fitting, the last shaving before the plank fits, that kind of thing, that's all hand tools. I think if you asked 100 boat builders, the overwhelming consensus would be that you have to be engaged with your work. You have to love what you do. Nobody just ends up as a boat builder. You have to want to be a boat builder, and that means, it consumes your thoughts while you're not working. It's you absolutely love every facet of every project. That's it. Otherwise, what's the point? I mean, you're never going to get rich doing it. It will probably kill you at some point. But it's honestly, I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
We do it because we love the work and we love the challenge. We love the variety. Sitting in an office was not something I ever pictured myself doing.
Well, my dad got me into wooden boat building. As a kid, he would take me around to marinas and we'd go find the oldest boat in the place and just kind of dream of fixing it up and just having a good time doing that.
I don't know how I had imagined it, but it was exactly what I had hoped it would be. It's mentally demanding, it's physically demanding, it requires you to be a great problem solver, critical thinker, that kind of thing. So I find the work incredibly fulfilling.
So we're finishing up a lot of milestones. The paint job is, the topside paint job is done, and that's been a long time coming. There's a lot of repairs and a lot of fairing, a lot of filler, a lot of, really making sure that that ended up correct after all the work that went on to those topsides. That's it. But again, we can try to bottom is done now, fully painted, primed, the whole thing, and obviously that's been an enormous endeavor, as that was one of the key items on this boat is rebuilding the bottom of the boat. The exterior of the boat is starting to look like it's ready for the water, and although we have a long way to go yet before the boat can go in the water, a lot of these finish items are really showing the progress on the boat for the first time.
So now that we've got all of the systems, the main engine, the generators, the fuel tanks, now that those are all in the boat and in the engine room, we can now start finishing building the bulkheads. The bulkheads are built out of 1-inch marine plywood, 2 layers of it, sandwiching some big white oak studs. These bulkheads are structural to help give the boat more rigidity because of the gyro stabilizer we're putting in the boat.
This is the mock-up for the, there'll be a little stateroom here, but double berth, right?
Right.
And then its own head with a nice standing shower.
Wow.
Everything there. And then they started messing around here. There's going to be another larger head and shower in this space.
Right.
Nice hallway up to the captain's quarters. There'll be another berth in here with a pipe berth, or with another berth that can drop down over there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that'll sleep 2, possibly 4, 5, 6, and then possibly one more in under the stairs. So it's our goal to be able to sleep 10 on the boat in a pinch.
They want to be able to sleep 10 people. So we got to find the spot for 10 people, and it's like, okay, who are we gonna, they got kids too. So a couple bunk beds for kids is fine. But this is gonna be a double bunk here. Maybe a double, maybe a twin bed behind the, in this corner over here behind the stairwell. We need to find, we need to make room for 10 people to sleep in this old fishing boat. So as per Henry, we'll find a spot.
During World War II, the A.G. Price was conscripted and was used down in Florida to transport goods from Guantanamo Bay in Cuba to stations and bases in Florida. And on one of those trips, on the way back, they encountered a German U-boat. And ordinarily, when these German U-boats find a boat that was painted with battleship gray and part of the Coast Guard, they would take the crew off, put them in a lifeboat, and let them float home, and then sink the boat. But on this case, when they went to see what kind of goods that were on the A.G. Price, they found that it was loaded with Cuban seagulls, which was very attractive, I guess, to those Germans who took every one they could take. And as a reward for having such a good cargo, they allowed the A.G. Price to continue on to Florida and didn't sink the boat and didn't put them adrift. They wanted them to make another couple of trips so that maybe on one of those return trips they could get some more Cuban seagulls. Yeah.
The A.G. Price, typical buy boat, built in 1928.
The boat was built in the 20s, and in the late 50s, 60s, it was converted to a yacht.
She's a Chesapeake buy boat, 72 feet long, 21-foot beam.
To my knowledge, Mob Jack and the Delvin K are the only remaining working buy boats.
They were the workhorse of the waterfront. They used them for everything.
Dan's been down below, and we have been working on the Gyro foundation, the whole custom-made channel that goes over the top of the keelson. There are a lot of lags. We've got some 10 and 12-inch lags that run right through the top and all the way down into that keelson.
We put this down with 2.5 quarts of G-Flex and 70 lags, though there's like 20 or 25 in the top that are a foot long, and then all the lags in the side are 3 inches long. There can't be any movement when the gyro is putting so much force. It's keeping the boat from rocking, just like the little toy gyroscopes that you used to play with as a kid. This is the same exact technology, but on a much larger scale, and it's keeping this entire 70-foot boat, 80-foot boat from rocking. So this can't move. So that's why there's so much.
The owner is getting more excited. We're seeing a lot more of him. His representative, Henry, is here quite a lot. So, and again, it's great having him boots on the ground because we don't have to wait for anything. You know, we have a question about something, we turn around, hey, Henry, what do you think of this? He gives us the answer and we keep going. I mean, I can't tell you what a luxury that is.
When I'm here, it's easier to use me as a sounding board or to answer small questions, yeah, right away and not hold up the process.
Coastal Queen is a really cool boat. It has so much character too. You don't really see a boat like that. I've never seen a boat like that. So it's been really fun to work on, and it also gets us all really motivated to make it look really good because the character in it, we just want to bring it to life. It's almost like putting eyes on a painting, putting the boat together. Peter's wonderful. He's very involved. They're here every week checking things out, and it's really good to have an involved owner. There are some boats where we don't get to meet the owners, and the difference when you do is a lot different. The motivation is there, and we want the boat to come out good. We like the boat a lot, and we like Peter, and we like Henry, so we're doing it for them, not just the paycheck. It's because we really want to do it.
Just about to close up the engine room and this booth that we have built up here to do the inside of the weatherboards. We have to completely seal the first floor of the boat. That way, everyone else can work in this shop and it doesn't stink. We have exhaust fans running people can still work, and the progress goes on. If you're out here in the shop while we're painting and we don't have a booth that's exhausted properly, these guys will have to either wear masks, everyone in the shop, or go home. So we spend more time trying to do that to keep the progress going. If not, the shop will be shut down for 2 days. Right now we're in the process of painting the inside of all these weatherboards and these posts here. We had to create this little structure here. That way we're able to paint these at the same time without our plastic hanging right next to it. This is an exhaust fan that runs into the engine room. That way when the overheads and all the walls are being painted down there, we can exhaust it. More intake filters, and this right here, we put in these little windows here because there'd be a guy on the outside of this wall, and his job is to pull these hoses in or through the wall or send them back in the other direction depending on how we're moving when we're painting this.
My hat's off to the Finnish guys. They make us look really good. The crispness and the cleanliness that their work shows it's a tribute to them. They honestly, I've never seen people prep for finish work like these guys do. You know, they're building tents with positive pressure. They're building all kinds of little sort of bow sheds over certain areas of the boat to isolate it from everything else so that they get a good result. But, I mean, it shows. You know, those handrails are absolutely gorgeous.
Ruben, Kate, and Freddie did all the sanding and varnishing of these and staining of the handrails and the balusters, and as you can see, it's an amazing job.
We've got this laser level that is set up on a declivity board because there's a little bit of angle to the bulkhead.
So we're building the bulkheads leaning forward so that when the boat sits in the water, it drops down those 18 inches, and the bulkheads will then be plumb to the water line, or plumb to the earth.
In the case of Coastal Queen, she was actually built on a beach. So one of the drawbacks of working on an inclined plane like a beach is that it's hard to control the angles of things inside the boat.
To build the forward cabins and to build the engine room and any of the bulkheads that we put in, or any of the furniture, everything that we put in the boat, the boat's not sitting level, right? It's not, the boat is sitting in our shop bow down because it was originally built on a beach, right? So it was built, you know, with the boat like this, but you know, it comes in and the boat is sitting bow down. So any of the bulkheads that we build, we have to adjust for that because once the boat goes back in the water and floats correctly, all our bulkheads will be off. So having a declivity board that Clark made up basically takes the error out of that and ensures that once you use that guide with a level, you can then adjust it, and now you can build all your bulkheads out of plumb, so that when they go in the water, they all stand up and the boat floats correctly, and the rest of the boat, all the rest of the bulkheads are plumb to the ocean.
We just finished installing the last major structural bulkhead up here. This through here is going to be the captain's cabin. What Sam is doing right now is he's creating a pattern for a front of this this cabin. What we're going to do is we'll make the pattern, we'll drop it on a piece of plywood, we'll cut it out, we'll add a couple of port lights, one for each shower that will be down here, so one over there, one over here, and then we'll install it. The next couple of weeks are going to be kind of exciting. This was sort of a bottleneck for a lot of the work that has to happen down here. So now that this is in and we're going to be mocking up the stateroom and whatnot, a lot of very critical decisions can be made regarding wiring and plumbing and all that good stuff, stuff that doesn't really concern us. So basically what we were told to do is just get this bulkhead in and get the heck out of the way so that the rest of the, the systems guys and the electricians can come in here and do their thing.
When Coastal Queen first showed up to us, we obviously unstepped her rigs. The main and mizzen were not in the greatest condition, and they were single telephone poles of lumber. So we moved it around the yard here and took 15 guys to load it onto a trailer to ship it down to Shell Custom Boat Works. And they used that as a template to build a new rig, build a new main and mizzen mast for the boat.
The mast is made from 8 staves. The glue-up process was a little more complicated than usual. We did it in 2 parts. So we assembled the entire mast, but only put glue on half the joints. Once that was cured, we popped it apart, and then we were able to work internally on the mast and lay out all the electrical chases and make sure that was all secured properly within the mast.
Oh, that.
The mast for the Coastal Queen is all glued up right now, and we're going from 8 sides to 16 sides, 32, and so on until basically we're round. So we're in that process right now.
And the final step is to sand it completely round. And with that, we use a homemade sanding drum and a sanding belt just turned inside out, and just up and down the mast, roll it over, up and down the mast, and we do that again and again until it's completely round. And from there, it's 8, 10, 12, or 20 coats of varnish, whatever it takes to get it right. And then it's sent off to de Rouville's boat shop, where George Schuld will design and build the hardware.
The very end of the boom, and then to a dead end here. There, basically the same type of thing in that position.
So we received the newly built mast and boom for the Coastal Queen from Pete Shell's boat shop up in North Jersey. And George is tasked with creating the necessary hardware to attach the rigging, which he'll be creating out of silicon bronze.
But what do you think of the boat?
I mean, I like the boat as much as anything else because Peter loves the boat.
Yeah.
That's really the heart of it. Is it a cool boat? Yeah, it's a cool boat. Yeah. Is it my thing? I don't know. I wouldn't know what to do with something like that.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating to work on. And the challenges presented to Pete, challenges presented to me, the rigging people, certainly McMillan's with all the work they're doing. That's amazing. And to be able to work on a boat like this is an honor. And it's an honor for me, and I'm sure it's an honor for everyone else to be able to work on something like this.
A lot of preparation has been building up the past couple of months for finally installing the gyro.
We finally had the crane come in to load the gyro in the boat. And, the gyro weighs as much as a large engine, 3,100 pounds. So it's not an insignificant thing to lift up. We certainly can't do it here in the shop, which is with a forklift or anything like that. We had, bring a proper crane company, the same guys who did the tanks, the same guys who did the engine and the generators originally, so we're familiar with them.
And let these straps come like this and let the heavy part come down, get it through the hole, and then
throw it on the heavy carts down there.
Lifted it up square, but in a way that we could tilt it slightly to get it through the hatch. The opening in the doghouse on the main deck is only so large. Just like the engine, it had to tilt a little bit to get down the hole. And then once it was down below, then we could square it up again, set it down on a wooden cradle, on the wooden cradle that it got shipped with.
it goes up under the carpet there is what it does, yeah.
Brought it in, and then we had two big I-beams that we braced off of the tops of the water tanks. And then we barely had enough room, but we had to lift it just high enough to take the pressure off of its crate, slide that crate out, then we could set it down on blocks. And we had beam trolleys and chain falls, and we were able to then pick it up and slide it, roll it across, hanging on those I-beams, and then we lowered it down onto its mounts.
So there's a couple different ways that boats are stabilized these days. Fin stabilizers, which have these, for all intents and purposes, little wings coming out the side of a boat, have been the mainstay in boat stabilization probably since about the 70s. And that is something that we have done in the past prior to the gyro stabilizer technology coming about or coming to maturity. One of the downfalls of fin stabilizers is that they point load the hull too much. And in a wooden boat, you're always trying to spread the load over a larger portion of the structure. And so having just two fins sticking out the side of the boat, we end up seeing a lot of movement in the hull because all the righting moment of the stabilization of the boat is all happening from two spots. Fins are located below the waterline. They require the boat to be in motion and water to be flowing over these wings to be able to stabilize the boat. And then they turn as necessary to sort of square things up. Whereas the gyro stabilizer, it's all internal to the boat.
So the gyro has a large stainless steel flywheel that spins on a vertical axis, so it's spinning like this at 5,000 RPM. Looks like a big, heavy motorcycle tire.
Inside the gyro sphere is a large weighted flywheel. That flywheel in that sphere is in a vacuum.
The gyro is encased in a vacuum in this sphere with the bearings on the top and the bottom that are liquid cooled. The gyro takes probably 45 minutes to spool up, so you have to turn it on before you plan on leaving the dock. And then when you shut it down at the end of the day, it might take 2 hours to stop spinning.
If the boat rolls to starboard, it imparts a force to port and vice versa in order to dampen the roll characteristics of any boat.
So we started on the pilot house a very long time ago when the boat first came to us. So now that everything, all the furniture has been put in and carpentry-wise the pilot house is finished, we're able to get in there and do all the finishing touches. With the windows installed, we could get all the windows painted. We painted the frame that holds the wheel. So we went in and did all the finishing touches, and now it's about done. So some of the windows, about every other window in the pilot house comes out. It'll drop down so you can get a nice breeze as you're coasting by. It's really, really cool in there. But some of the windows are stationary. The one in the middle can't drop down because the wheel is on the inside and the outside of the boat and it passes right underneath.
We're continuing to do a lot of finish work on the outside as well as the inside of Coastal Queen, and now we're starting to finally see some things finished up and walking away from certain areas. The pilot house doors, access doors, have been reinstalled. A lot of the doors for cabins and rooms, galley access, things like that on the main deck, they're all done and finished. Some of them have been installed, others we're leaving off just so they don't get damaged during the final stages here of construction. But then interior spaces like the pilot house, which were in varnish for quite a while, those last little details are taken care of. Paint touch-ups in the overhead, those things are these last little details that really sort of finish it up. And it's nice to see them being done, crossed off the list, tape pulled, and backing our way out of there. Throughout Coastal Queen, we're going to have various cameras monitoring some critical spaces, specifically the engine room, but also cameras on the aft deck that will monitor a tow. If you're towing a tender or something along those lines, a great distance. The visibility aft from the pilot house is not ideal.
You know, Henry and Peter are going to be towing a big inflatable everywhere they go. So we're going to be putting a little flat screen in the back of the pilot house that'll be connected to a camera, or 2 or 3 that will be on the boat, and one of them will be, you know, shooting back aft to be able to, you know, check on that tender, because the visibility is not great from the pilot house. You got to, you know, get outside and look back or walk through the master cabin there. It's going to be really cool to be able to run the boat, look over your shoulder, look at this screen, and pretend that that bulkhead doesn't even exist. You're looking through, you know, through a camera, looking back aft if you're docking, backing in somewhere, or, you know, or again, you're looking at your tow, that you're making sure that your towboat is in good shape.
We're going to have a wing station on Coastal Queen for her helm. Ultimately, it's a little bit of a luxury, but Coastal Queen is a big, unwieldy boat to maneuver, certainly in close quarters, around some docks and you know, getting, you know, into various slips and different marinas and things like that.
You can take that box, it's tethered, it's hardwired. You can take it out and put it on the side rail and sit there, and you can run the boat with great visibility. You're not in this little box in the top trying to like listen by the radio. You're out there running the boat. So when you're in, like I said, you don't need it all the time, but when you're in a tight spot, it's very, very handy.
Being able to have the helmsman, have the captain out on the rail with steering, thruster, and engine controls, be able to have a better visual of what's going on is going to make, you know, docking the boat that much safer.
This area of the boat down beneath the companionway ladder is still kind of a work in progress. We're going to make this into a bit of a crew common area, so we're thinking probably a settee along this bulkhead here. We're trying to figure out a good way to put a table in here for crew mess. There will be a bunk up here as soon as we get the water heater squared away, which lives in this corner back here. But as soon as we do that, we can build that out, bunk on top, and then another settee so that they're facing each other across a table. That's the plan so far. Things tend to change as we mock things up, and it tends to change pretty quickly around here. So, you know, be prepared for none of that to actually happen. But this being such a critical junction in the boat, where the deck meets the topside planking, there's a great deal of thought and care that goes into this joint. So you'll see actually that there's a beam shelf, and then the deck beams sit on the beam shelf, and then there's open space. That's by design. That's called an air strake. And what that does is that allows for air circulation. So the real enemy of wooden boats is various types of molds and fungus and whatnot, and they need 3 things to survive. They need a certain amount of moisture, they need a certain amount of calm air, and they need a certain amount of heat. So if you can take one of those things away, you can really slow down the growth of, or eliminate it altogether, of molds and funguses, and which lead to rot. So with the air strake, what we're trying to do is we're trying to promote air circulation around the beam shelf, around the frame heads, under the deck, and because of the camber of the deck above, the majority of the fresh water is going to end up in that area anyway. So we want to try and get rid of it as expeditiously as we can.
At this point, McMillan's is getting into the home stretch with the work on the Coastal Queen, and Henry contacted us to see if we could build the Fife rail for the boat. That is the fixture that goes around the mast, holds some belaying pins, some turning blocks, and pretty much handles all the control lines and the halyards that come down the mast to the deck. All right, so here's a good example of a Fife rail on the scow schooner Nina, where you have your halyards leading down. This is on the foremast, just belayed on the pins right around there. So to create the belaying pins that go into the Fife rail, we first had to acquire some black locust that we don't usually use too much of. So fortunately, Pete Shell up at Shell Custom Boat had some in stock, and he sent it down to us, and we were able to rip out our turning stock. So the black locust is a very, it's a strong wood, it's hard, rot resistant, holds up well to this type of application where you're not going to really be applying a finish to it. You can just be left out in the weather. Black locust is used in a number of wooden boat building applications. Traditionally, I think black locust was used by Chet. He used it as trunnels in the fastening of the schooner Coronet. So after we get the rough, the shape roughed in, then we come back at it with some sandpaper, clean it up a little bit, and you have a belaying pin.
The belaying pins are a very traditional way to control lines. When you have a Fife rail, this makes sense because you can put them much closer together. If you had cleats, you couldn't put 3 cleats here. That just, you wouldn't have the real estate. But you have these. Plus, they're very simple because you take the line off and you can just slip this out of the way. Everything comes out. You can put it back in and control your lines. And I mean, these are, I believe they're done black walnut. Bill turned these, and I think you did a great job. I mean, look at the match. All 3 are the same. I think they're going to be really pretty, and it gives you some adjustability later on. We have certain things that we want to get done with the spar. We want to be able to use it to be able to lift potentially quite heavy load. All of the hardware is meant to handle that. The lines are meant to handle that. The blocks are meant to handle that. So we could pick something up several thousand pounds rather than in the old boat days, they were picking up maybe 100 pounds of oysters or so at a time, and that could have been done by hand with a block and tackle. Original purpose of these boats were to lift and transport things commercially, through a range of things, and that main purpose of this boat was to physically put things from dock to boat to dock or otherwise. This boat was built nearly 100 years ago. It had a very different purpose back then, and Slade-Dale changed that purpose dramatically, 20, 30 years later. Mr. Kellogg wanted to take on this project and give this boat a whole new lease on life, and she needed it, and she's got a long history ahead of her, and I'm sure they're going to have a whole lot of fun with her.
I'm trying to reconcile the original build of the boat through the photographs that we have with a couple of texts that we use quite a lot. In this case, this is Boat Building by Howard Chappell. I've been using Larry Chuning's book, Chesapeake Bay Buy Boats, quite a lot of late too. A lot of good information, a lot of anecdotal information. Some of these pictures go back 75, 80 years, and we can look at the way that a hatch is constructed, for example, or what the eyebrow on a pilot house looks like.
We have some trim that we're going to put around this cargo hold top, We're still debating on what size to do it. The eyebrow around the top of the pilot house, we were gonna maybe copy that, but it might be just a little too big, so we're gonna scale it down.
The eyebrow around the pilot house is quite large. It's about 4 inches across, and we are looking to recreate that detail along the cabin trunk. An eyebrow is just a little piece of wood that sticks proud of the side of the cabin of a boat. In this case, this is in Chappelle's boat building, but this would be considered an eyebrow on the side of a cabin trunk. And basically what it's there for is not only aesthetics, but it's also there to redirect any fresh water that happens to end up on the deck, whether it's rain or dew or what have you. The water is going to come down the camber of the deck, it's going to roll around here, and then it's going to stop right there, and it's going to drip down outside of all of this instead of running down in here and causing all kinds of trouble.
So this is our deck box that we've built out of wood. This whole box is all a function of hiding these air intake fans that are supplying fresh air into the engine room for the engines and generators to function properly, and provides a nice little seat for this outside this cabin back here too. With the boat, there's a lot of camber, which is uneven. It's not evenly or symmetrically curved this way, but then there's also a lot of shear back here. So I think the legs are, I don't know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches. The aft ones are shorter than the front ones by a significant amount, just to make it level on the top, so it's comfortable to sit on and not feel like you're falling out of it. But then also had to sort of look the same as, the face of this should be sort of parallel with the back of the house, and then this should be about the same as the level of the bed in there. So it should all look right. That was my biggest thing, because then, these heights, because the camber's off, the height of the rail off the deck is not the same either. So there was not a lot to measure from. Yeah. Well, this was a fishing boat. This wasn't a yacht. So the building standard was very much function over form. So the boat is cambered to shed water off the deck. They didn't much care if it was super even or not.
Just about every boat on Earth has camber, and camber is basically just shape to a boat. I mean, every road in America has it too, for the same exact reason. And it's got a crown, and that is simply to shed water to the sides so it doesn't pool up and cause problems. This is a fairly subtle camber because she's a deck-loaded boat. You can't have very severe angles out towards the edges because stuff starts to fall overboard. But in Nordic countries, they don't have to worry so much about rain as ice and snow. So they've got camber on their decks that is literally like this. So it'll shed the ice and not pile up on the boat and sink it.
The rod is here. We've got a welded flange stopper, and this is welded to the bracket. So we have this copper ball, which is traditional for Chesapeake Bay buy boats, and I suspect its primary function is to keep the birds from landing on top and pooping on the operators. I'll put it in here so it won't fall out.
So this way, we just have a cotter pin, it keeps it in, bird lands on, they can spin around, do whatever they want, and this pulls out very easily and safely. And then you still have access to the low pose. Everything is watertight with watertight fittings in here, and you can get to everything, but it leaves it fairly clean.
Back in the day, German woodworking guilds had a system that that made the entire system self-sustaining, essentially. And what it was you were either a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. 1 being a novice and 4 being a master. The caveat is that you cannot become a 4 without helping a 1 become a 2. So, and you know, it's with boat building, I feel that responsibility very keenly, and learning from my master shipwright made me realize that, you know, this is a trade that doesn't have a whole lot of people, and to make sure that everybody who works around you has the pertinent information and the necessary skills is very important.
In a more traditional round bilged boat, when you go to haul out with a strap style lift, there's a pretty even amount of force being imparted on the hull throughout the entire curve of the hull. In this style construction, with a very shallow dead rise and then a hard chine, you have an enormous point load. Basically, you're hauling the boat by lifting the keel and pressing on this chine, and there's basically only 3 points that the lift is grabbing on to lift the entire boat out of the water. And it's something you generally shy away from unless you are sure that the boat is structurally sound enough to be able to take that.
We're pre-mixing all these buckets so we can move as efficiently as possible to mix batch, and mix batch as we go. Because we're laminating 10 layers on, and we need to make sure that we have as little downtime as possible. The laminates are going for a 40-foot length on the chine. That goes from the bottom of the hull to the sides. Pete Shell and his crew are on the other side of the boat doing some all grip work, and he's all set there. So we're on the port side doing this layup so we don't get in each other's way too badly.
We work on a lot of parts of this boat at our shop in Bear Pond. We worked on the mast, we worked on the mizzen, and we worked on the boom. And we worked on a couple other things, odds and ends. All the blocks all the lifting blocks for the mast and the mizzen and all that stuff. So there was a lot of bright work that we were working on, a lot of woodwork. We built the mast from scratch, varnished them from beginning to end. And Peter Slack came to do a video about a month before I started there, and then after that I kind of just started watching them, and I've been through pretty much most of them. So through that I gained some familiarity with the boat, and so I just didn't understand the scale of it and what I was going to really be looking at, but it's extremely impressive. But through his videos I learned a lot of history of the boat and what it's been through, how it was an oyster boat, somebody converted it to a yacht, and now somebody's carrying on that idea, and it's going to be really an awesome cruiser.
The boat goes in the water tomorrow. We move it out of the building, grab it with the travel lift, and place it in the water. Obviously, before the travel lift pulls away, we want to make sure that there's no leaks in the boat, but I suspect that we're going to be pretty good on that front. At that point, we're going to be able to step the rigs. So we're going to put the rigs in the boat. Temporary stays for the moment, but most importantly is getting the weight in the boat so we can start figuring out exactly where the water line sits. Because without knowing exactly where the water line sits, there's a number of through holes that are in the top sides that would really be placed improperly if we guessed at it now.
They're gonna fill the big barrels with water and put them on the deck so they know how much fuel weight is gonna be here. It's gonna be some in the bow for the chain weight, and then they'll empty those out. We'll strike a water line, and then there's a lot of through holes already in, but there's more to go.
We don't know where the boat's going to float exactly. You know, we've done a lot of changes, and you know, with different size tanks, and this new engine is lighter than the other one, but the generators might be this and adding the gyro for sure. So we're not 100%. You know, the bow thruster all the way up forward there actually loses some displacement. You got a hole in the boat, so you lose a little buoyancy there.
There will probably be some leaking. I'm expecting it back aft by the stern post and shaft log, and where all those, and a part of the keelson actually comes out of the boat there.
Because there's
there's a lot of joints back there, and large timber joints, so that's a leak, a potential leak point.
Right.
The rest of the boat I'm not worried about at all, really. You know, there's checks in the stern post, and there's you know, it's just part of it. There's checks on the keelson on the inside, and I think everything's, but whatever has opened up will close back up when it goes in the water. So it's not an issue. It's a wooden boat. They're supposed to do that.
It's funny, you know, when we first started, you know, this project, and you know, we first started shooting, you know, we were looking at this same area. I mean, we were looking at the cross plank bottom and the you know, the traditional plank top sides with the end grain and the chine, and you know, how far we've come in that, and the changes that we made. Obviously, you know, we didn't know if we were going to remove the inner chine and the outer chine. They all went, along with a lot of the traditional planking, and obviously the entire bottom. So, you know, she's a different boat. She's the same boat, but she's a different boat. She's got a whole new lease on life.
So tomorrow morning we're putting the boat in, so that means the front of the building has to come apart, which, you know, the doors slide open, the big window lifts up, and then this big I-beam here gets unbolted. It's been a while. It's been a couple of years since we took it out, so trying to remember. I'm just down here looking at it, trying to remember all the bolts and all the pieces and what's deteriorated in the last 2 years.
Coastal Queen's original launch date was roughly 23,819 days ago. Before she ascended to royalty and became a queen, she was a working girl, carrying goods up and down the Chesapeake Bay. After purchasing her, Slade Dale took the buyboat named A.G. Price to Ralph Wiley's shipyard, where he lived for 18 months working side by side Wiley's carpenters and shipwrights. Her life as a Chesapeake Bay buyboat had ended, and instead of carrying thousands of oysters to market, She now would carry passengers, exploring the beauty of the inland waterway.
Good. Oh, that's loaded. We got a lot on those. Well, we're making sure that we're trying to just make everything even. So we don't want too much here. We really want to support the chine, but the keel as well. We want to be able to have equal amount of pressure, if we can, here and here to support the boat. Corey, you still good? Okay, that angle's good.
Hey, Jeff? Jeff? Hey.
Yeah. We may have to rip that header out, which is removable, but if you come back in, we'll have to grab that with the forklift quick and pull it down. Sorry, we brought it in on a different type of cradle, and we could get it a little bit lower. This is a new hydraulic trailer that they have, and that trailer is great. It saved a lot of labor setting the cradle back up under the boat, but it's sitting a little bit too high to get out the front of our building with just the front part of our door swung open. So we're gonna have to remove that as well. We built it all to be removable. See that piece of steel hanging out, right? Okay. I think she fits on that trailer pretty damn good. What's that? Can we sneak it out just a little bit more towards the chine? Just a little. Yeah, we can come down. Yeah, right. It's pretty good. I'm happy with that. We are just getting the strap set up under the queen. Just getting it placed kind of on our chine reinforcement areas and missing some blocking under there on the trailer and stuff like that. Just getting it set up to put a little bit of weight on the aft straps first. Are they spread pretty good? Corey, pull that front strap forward. Keep coming. This strap's point loaded so hard. Well, they're inside and they're saying there's no creaking, no nothing. They're pretty happy with it. I just called Jeff on the phone. He said it was really good inside, so that's good. That's what we want to hear. Yeah, we're just chatting and trying to hear or look and see if there's any deflection, anything we should be concerned about inside the boat. And said everything looks so far so good. Mac, do you have some green tape up there? See where the straps are right now? I'd like to put little marks, little green tape on either side of each strap. So when the boat, this is like really good placement where they are right now, how they're splayed out and stuff. You know, we could take some measurements or put some little ticks in the rub rail like we talked about.
finally, you know, after almost 3 years. Everything's going well so far. The move out of the building went well, the lift went well. Everything we had planned for the strengthening of the chine, it all worked out. So we didn't see any movement to the boat. She's floating well, she's floating relatively level as we had sort of planned. Obviously we don't have all the weight in it yet, so the main and the mizzen still have to be stepped. But we're going to get those in and start to square the boat up, and then she's going to swell up a lot. She's got a few leaks back aft in the stern post, which is sort of what we expected. We thought there was going to be some stern leaks as well as some bow leaks. And it's coming in fast and furious, but it's, you know, it's an old piece of lumber, and it's not that unexpected. So, you know, might take some days, might take longer than that, but I think it'll seal up. And it's just a lot of components. You know, there's a lot of lumber, old and new, coming together in this huge section, then holes through it for the shaft and for the rudder. So it's a complex area that has all been out of the water for, you know, for over 2 years. Some of that lumber has never been in the water. I mean, this is a complex area made up of new and old lumber. So you look at the old lumber, it hasn't been in the water in over 2 years. And you look at the new lumber and it's never been in the water. So its moisture content, you know, we managed it best we could in the building from its, you know, from felling of the tree. But ultimately, I mean, everything sort of has to seek a level of moisture and find how much it's going to swell. And
You're basically clear. Keep side shifting so it kind of takes this mast away from the tent.
Just about to step the mizzen rig in Coastal Queen, slide her back to the dock so the crane can reach a little easier. Rig up both rigs and, you know, get them in the boat. They're time for them to go in. They're part of the weight. That's a big thing for us right now, figuring out where the water line falls. But there's also a lot of rigging to do to them, and it's time for them to go in the boat.
Look away.
Look
away.
Look away.
What's happening?
He's gonna steal the $50.
Did you see the year?
1928. This is the G10 plate that Matt constructed so that we can, you know, ultimately it's going to act as the mast partner. We didn't want to put a bunch of load on the edge of the deck in this area, so we built a G10 plate, glassed the tube to it, and then ultimately the mast will be wedged up against this tube, and this plate will distribute that load throughout all the deck beams in this area. We've got a 1 pound note from Isle of Man. Yeah, the rig just set down. You know, we set it in the middle of the step. We've got some adjustment for the future because there's some blocks, and the step is larger than the butt of the mast is, and that allows us to adjust the angle in the future. But I think we're pretty good now. Obviously, we'll have to see when the boat levels out if the rake of the rig is appropriate or not. Put some temporary mast wedges in here right now, and put some temporary stays on, head stay, side stays, and the rig is in. I mean, it's great to see it floating in the water. You know, I mean, just from a morale standpoint for the rest of the crew. I mean, that's just, this is a day that everybody has worked really, really hard for. I mean, not too long ago, this boat didn't have a bottom. From that waterline down, didn't exist. So the idea that now it's in the water, it's floating on its own bottom, and it's doing what a wooden boat should do. And you know, there's things to be done, but this is a great, very big step in a line of many steps, but it's a big step. So when we launched the boat, there was a fair amount of water coming in the stern post. We expected the bow and stern to leak, you know, because there's a lot of old and new material sort of joining back there. Some of it, you know, old enough has now been out of the water for a couple of years. Some of it has never been in the water. And, you know, lo and behold, we had a fair leak at the stern post. And over a few days it was closing up, but just in an effort to get beyond that point, we had divers jump in the water, used a little bit of milk in a squirt bottle, which is a pretty typical way. You can see where the leak is by how the milk gets drawn up inside the crack. And then he put wax in there, which is not that uncommon in wooden boats, and you know, pack that opening with some wax. They will swell, the pieces will swell, and they will become naturally watertight, and that wax will just squeeze right back out, and so it won't create any sort of structural concern.
So we're taking the lifting boom. Well, the first step is to get it down on the floating dock. So we'll take about 5 or 6 people, we'll carry it down, we'll set it down, and we'll put these little chocks down in the ground. You want to try that end? I'll hand on this end? Okay, great. Ready? So at some point, we're going to, I guess we're going to bring the saddle to the mast itself, then bring the boom up, bring it over, attach it to the saddle, be able to hold that in position height-wise, and then we can get the rigging to the spar itself, and then be able to lift the rest of the spar from the rigging lines.
Gucci, Gucci, Gucci.
It's really cool to see it up. It's a lot of weight, a lot of big pieces of metal being pushed around, run through the saws, get welded and ground and fit, refit and refit.
What do you think of this bronze work?
It's okay. I mean, it's not as fine as stuff.
Henry managed getting the boom on. You know, Henry has his way.
Now I need you guys to get that on the spar, eh?
So, you know, we had a bunch of different things rigged up and a bunch of different plans, and it all worked. You know, it went up, but we're glad he took care of that.
That was quite exciting when the mast and the boom all got installed. And a lot of that stuff, we were working on the boat while that was obviously being built off-site. And George showed up and Henry showed up with it and stuff. And I wasn't really 100% on the front lines at all on how all that was going together. It was explained to me, a lot of how it's similarities to a cat boat and stuff like that, which is cool. And but they did an amazing job, George and the fabrication and all that hardware, and it's very impressive, very impressive. And it really takes that boat and just takes it to another level with all that really cool traditional rigging and stuff like that. That's all there. It's really special.
The boat is starting to look like it did in the old photos. It's a good look. She looks like harken back to her working boat heritage.
What are you doing here?
I'm just doing what I know how to do best, is clean.
Elizabeth shows up at this point in the project with the whole team. Blinds are going up and rooms are being cleaned and pillows are showing up.
I kind of come in at the end. I get the last of, I get the end of the budget and I get the end of the time frame, and then I've got to throw it all together. This is all fun for me to come in and do this, and the guys laugh at me all the time. They go, oh gosh, here she comes again with 9 million pillows. Why does she have so many pillows? Because we have to move them all and we have to worry about them flying overboard.
And she also has an enormous amount of great energy. I mean, she's in here, she's been planning and doing all this preliminary work while we're making messes.
Okay, so we try to figure out what we want to do with these blinds, and this room is kind of, you're in here and you're in a fishbowl, especially if you're at the dock and all of a sudden you're at a busy dock and you go to get dressed and you're like, yikes, everybody can see you. So, and also it's bright in here in the morning. So if you want to have it, we figured out, Kristen, this amazing gal we work with that does all of our blinds, figured this out for us. So we've got blackout for the bottom, it goes blackout down, and then you can have open so you can see everything, or from the top down, it goes light filtering. So it's kind of magic. You get the best of both.
Now the boat is getting closer and closer to being used by the owner. The owner has selected a captain. His name is Mac Topman. He's run boats for the owner before, so it's sort of a natural progression.
Right now, there's a lot of opinions on it. Eventually, I think what we'll end up doing is we'll duct in the exhaust on the other side of this bulkhead. Where it comes out of that bulkhead, we'll duct it in to the stack. And so all the excess CFM in here will be forced out that way. The exhaust has been mostly reused from the 671 to the new Cummins. The new Cummins, the exhaust temperature in theory would be much higher. The game here is starting with as few variables as possible and minimizing risk, and then sort of slowly using the boat more, figuring out things and sort of introducing more options and variables as we go.
One of the things Mac has been concentrating too is just getting familiar with all the systems on the boat and stuff like that.
He's worked with us here getting the boat ready to go and making sure that things on his list because operating the boat sometimes has a little different priorities than restoring the boat. So it's nice getting his perspective and oh yeah, we got to get that, we got to get that, we got to get that, and making sure that the boat is ready to get out of here and start operating for the wherever the owner wants it.
No, she's down
there. From working with Peter for years, I've learned very much that it's equally about the process and the journey as it is about the destination. And so, it's daily communication with Peter, not only about what we're getting done, but about the challenges and the fun and the pursuit of success with it. The craftsmanship that's gone into the boat has been terrific. The decision making that's gone into the boat has been terrific. The future planning that's gone in has been great. And so really it's set us It set a really solid foundation for the future.
I guess we should have grabbed a little higher.
Coastal Queen has already had her first job, so to speak, and harking back to her workboat roots.
Now it's going to come and hit you in the face, so careful. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Around that. Okay. Try yours. Ready? I got the side.
We had one of our yachts that we restored a few years ago. We were doing some repairs to her davits, and Coastal Queen's boom came into play to lift these pretty heavy davits up onto the top deck. After we were done painting them. So we were happy to have her dockside.
There's like a 6-to-1 purchase on some of that stuff, and those davits weigh, I don't know, 400 or 500 pounds a piece. So it lifted it with ease.
It worked. There it is. That was exciting. Kate and Molly have been walking around the boat, marking different locations that need a little touch-up, and then they scuff it back and hit it with some fresh paint so it looks all new, like it should.
Welcome to my boat. My boat. Not Corey's. Not Corey's boat. Corey's very poor. Very poor.
Kate is doing a great job. She met Ruben, or Ruben found her, and the two of them are like match made in heaven, and he has now turned her into a star varnisher.
So I was hired by Macmillan the week after they got Coastal Queen, so I've never seen the shop. Until this past week, I had never once seen the shop without the Queen in it. Yeah. So Monday morning I walked in and I was like, whoa, it's a big building. Yeah. It looks so small when half of it was taken up by a boat. Right now, we're going to varnish the thresholds. We've got people walking in and out of the boat, so it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. I might just end up kicking everyone off the boat and doing what I need to do.
Kate is a great teacher. She's a good mentor. She taught me a bunch of tricks, how to keep the paint from not running. And I feel like I noticed over the days that we were working on there, I improved quickly with her feedback.
I think I'm learning more through teaching her too. She asks why about everything. Like I will wipe the wood with a certain type of chemical and she'll ask me why I did it, and I have to scratch my head and say, I don't really know why I did it. All I know is that it was done. Right.
So originally we had a leak from the stern post, which is a lot of timbers coming together there. It's kind of a tricky spot with the keel and the feather timbers and stern post all coming in together.
This particular piece of lumber travels in a solitary piece all the way down and meets up at the keel. It goes through, it penetrates all this other structure here. So, it's an odd joint.
So we had, a diver come down and put some slick seam in some spots, trying to slow it down, and it did. Actually, he was able to stop it 100%. Then we went out and did a sea trial with the Cummins mechanics, and they want to go hammer down. So we did we're out for a couple hours going through different RPMs, and they're taking their readings for fuel pressure and exhaust back pressure and temperatures and all this stuff. And in the very end, they're just like, put it wide open. So the Queen was doing 11 knots. She probably hadn't done 11 knots, maybe ever. So we're just digging the back, the back of the boat, squatting, but they want to see maximum RPM. They want to see hammer down, and they want to hold it there for 15 or 20 minutes. We were just flat out. When we were doing our sea trial and we were flat out for that 20 minutes and stuff like that, that put a lot of pressure on that slick seam that the diver had pushed into a lot of different places and just washed some of it away, basically. So Chris Sanders had a diver come in today and go down and do some more touching up, right? They put a tingle, they call it, a little copper plate, you know, over where some of those seams come together.
We've got 2 different gauges of nail. You want to just try these, see what you get.
I'll give you a bunch. I'll just, yeah.
Yeah, I was called here just to hop down there and actually diagnose a leak that they had found, and I actually pinpointed it, and we were able to actually mold and install a copper plate. So when we did that, we actually totally sealed it up, and as of right now, the bilge is dry.
That copper plating that we used is very traditional, and it's used a lot on other buy boats and skipjacks and stuff like that for, you know, decades and decades and decades.
You look good, eh? Pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of your work went into this thing, right?
Yeah. A lot of time, energy, and love in work.
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's true.
This is the guy too. Yeah, a little here and there.
The boat looks great. So many hours, so many people involved. There's just some great craftsmen that got put onto this boat over the last, 3 years. It's nice to see it all come together.
Yeah.
You get a feel for what you hope it's going to look like when it's all together.
Yeah.
You imagine it, I don't know, hundreds of times as you're building it as you go, but you know, once it's actually up and you see it together, and it's great. You can't help but, I don't know, feel a little prideful about your little part of a very big project.
So what do you think, seeing the sticks up to the...
I think it makes the boat. I think the boat looks awesome with it. I can't imagine without it. I mean, they really look good. Anybody's sticks would look good, but I think it looks like a buy boat.
Yeah.
You know, which is, that's the idea, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the lifting boom really gives it the whole look.
We had a nice morning to just, you know, start out and really work on various, you know, last minute projects on the boat. It got progressively worse, you know, you know, as we're getting ready to leave, especially, I mean, it's, you know, it was a pretty inclement day.
We had weather fighting us. We had just a lot of manpower. I mean, we basically had everybody in our shop on that boat, just pushing, and, you know, every cabin, people were, it was pretty chaotic.
That's it, first voyage right here. That's awesome, all right? Good to see.
The day of the party, ultimately, you know, we're responsible for the boat, and we want to make sure that it's getting down to Newport in one piece. We've done some sea trials, but this is really the first time it's leaving the dock to go anywhere other than run circles. So, you know, we get off the dock, pick up a mooring in front of a boatyard, and then at that point the owner arrived on Black Watch. You know, we headed down the bay towards Newport, but now we have got the owner on board and a bunch of their friends. And everybody's really excited, which is nice to see, obviously. This is the first sort of time they've been down in the boat with it as complete as it is. We've got the gyro running, so that's great, and things are happening. And having some things up and running and seeing the interior the way it was, and it was nice to sort of see other people's reactions about how well the boat came together.
We didn't even have a primary, one of our main generators online yet. We still had a little Honda generator on the back deck, just keeping the lights on, and the bilge pumps, they didn't need to be there, but I mean, and we had a backup generator, backup fuel, so it was a little, it was funny. I mean, we didn't have a working head on the boat at the time. People stepped on board and they were asking, where's the head? I'm like, we don't have one yet. They were sitting down there, but they were not connected or hooked up to anything yet. So luckily it wasn't a long trip. The party was fantastic. Peter and Cindy and Henry and everybody else who was involved in trying to put all that together, they did an amazing job, and it was fantastic to be there with all the guys from the shop and so many people that watched all the films and the movies and stuff like that. It was really good, and a lot of people came up to all of us, complimenting us and saying what a good job we were doing, which is really special.
It was fun to see everybody that had a hand in it that may not have all been sort of here in our yard show up, and everybody was together, that sent stuff up from New Jersey and varnished things and built things and bronze work and woodwork and so on, and how all these people sort of came together for the first time all in one spot. We've had a lot of commissioning parties for the boats that we've dealt with over the years, but certainly not to this level. This owner has been very, very gracious, making sure that the crew that works on the boat is recognized for the work that they do, that we all do. To have something this large and complex come together and really sort of congratulate us all on those successes. And it's really nice to be part of it, and it's nice to have an owner that is so amazing to work with and for, and getting the boat to his hands is a that helps drive us.
At 7:15, please gather on the beach for the christening of the Coastal Queen. Not silent.
Queen, the silent queen. By the great lady who did all the varnish work with the different hair colors.
That great lady, of course, was Kate, who just 4 years ago was looking for direction working at a temp agency. And now she was christening the boat that helped her become one of Macmillan Yacht's top finishers.
Yeah, here's the bottle. Okay, now's the time. Now's the time. Here you go, Peter.
By the way,
Beautiful coastal queen, we wish you so much luck on all your sails.
You were great.
How did I do?
The G quay.
Okay,
Keep it up.
Yeah.
In an interview.
First try too, didn't even need the second bottle.
Now we've yet to meet. Who's the partner?
I'm Kate.
Hi, Kate.
I did a lot of the varnish work on the boat.
Oh, that's how you had the privilege of smashing the bottle.
And Deacon was their captain for 30 years.
Yeah, like
So what do you think of it now?
she's the coastal queen. Yeah, I mean.
Did we do a good job?
Huh?
Did we do a
Oh,
good
you
job?
did a phenomenal job.
Good.
Phenomenal job.
Especially the bright work.
Especially the bright work.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah, but what are you using for varnish?
Well, I'll just say.
You can't tell. No. Huh?
He's recording. I can't
It's
say.
all right.
I had this great opportunity to go up and film some of the Coastal Queen series doing second camera. The producer asked my daughter, knowing that she was an artist, if she could draw caricatures of each person involved in the restoration of the Coastal Queen. And the producer had developed a line drawing of Coastal Queen inside Macmillan Yachts. My daughter Sailor was sent still shots of each person involved with a description of what they did and something that they maybe would be wearing or a tool that they would be holding. And she drew caricatures and went back and forth with the producer on how to make that person come to life in the drawing. At the launch party, we got to present the owner of Coastal Queen with the actual drawing, the line drawing and the caricatures in a framed matted print, which was really exciting. And I was really proud because it was my daughter that did the drawings. I think it was most fun to see the shipwrights or people's reactions to their own caricature and how much they enjoyed finding themselves in it and then wanting to have a print of it.
I'm up there with my thumbs up, and Matt's dog is even there. Like, it was super great to like stare at it for 20, 25 minutes, be like, oh, that's this person, look at them, they're doing this. And like, it was fun to just stare at it for 20 minutes and you keep seeing all these little details. I was on the top deck of the boat with 2 thumbs up because every time I'm filming or filming myself to send the footage to Pete Slack, for some reason I give 2 thumbs up. It just feels natural. So he hates that. So I make sure to keep doing it because it just annoys him.
It's fun to have a drawing like that and have it shows the big family that is Macmillan Yachts and all the other people that came together to make the project. We all have to sort of work together as a big crazy family to get the project this big done.
I think the cartoon to me was pretty good. I laughed pretty good at Todd's, that was, but it was done very well.
The cartoon drawing was great. I do look thinner than I do in real life, so I appreciate that greatly.